Your education is nothing special.
Shut down McDonald's for 13 days.
तो मत करो ना अंशुल.
Everybody needs lawyers.
Law students should not do unpaid internships.
If I sit on the co-driver's seat and have a beer.
That's absolutely fine.
Alright, welcome to 15th episode of Vakeel Lane. This is Anshul Chaudhary. Again, back with the Banger podcast. I hope you check us out on Spotify, Google and Apple Podcast. Fun part, we are also starting on OnlyFans because we see a lot of potential over there. And that's interesting because a lot of people have started paying us by $7 per month for subscriptions. And I'm like, wow, like, why would anybody want to watch that? Derailing from that, straight up, today's podcast is more about Wakalat, the reality check for law students. We are here at the North Cap University, specifically sitting with the students of 4th year law school. Urvi, what are the 5 things you wish you did in law school which you truly regret?
I have absolutely no regrets when it comes to law school. I think everything which was on my checklist or bucket list, so as to speak. I think, I pretty much checked all the boxes. In fact, we were just having a chat about this right before the session had to start. Yeah, I think it was, I wish I could have probably attended the morning lectures of CPC better in a more wide awake state and not, be half asleep. That's probably one thing I regret. But other than that, no regrets at all.
Okay, I'll then frame the question better. What are the 3 things you wish you had in law school in terms of, let's say, a specific type of software or some device that you wish that you had at that time, which would have made your career and your day-to-day life far more easier as a lawyer?
So in terms of, I believe you would want to know certain tangible things which would have made our lives as law school students easier. Definitely a better library, because that's something at least my law school lacked at the time. So definitely better resources in terms of books. That's one thing. Another thing, I think maybe a better infrastructure campus-wise, because again, this is 2014 when I graduated from Symbiosis Law School, Pune. And right after that is when the students moved to a bigger campus. So the perks of having a bigger campus is, of course, everybody is on campus. You get to interact with seniors and juniors, and there's a lot of bouncing off of the thoughts with each other. And the true college culture that you get to learn, which is not something you can pick up straight off the books. So I think definitely better infrastructure and better library for sure. Because I remember we used to end up going to ILS, which was right next door in Pune, because they had a much bigger and a much richer library. So whenever we had to end up researching for moots, we would always end up going to ILS, getting a special pass made and accessing their libraries while competing against the ILS teams in the same moot court competitions. So these are the 2 things I could think of off the top of my head.
Okay, I was just thinking that I wish I had an iPad when I was in law school and things would have been very easier. Because,
Definitely.
I mean, having gone through that entire process for having read files and files for 10 years, it's like lawyers are required to read close to 400, 500 pages every day. And when you're reading that much, it's very difficult to retain that much. And your seniors clearly expect you to memorize even the punctuations well.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then you're either standing at the risk of getting a reprimand from your senior in front of the judge when the judge reprimands your senior.
Ouch. Yeah.
And that happens.
It's a trickle-down effect.
Yeah. And while your senior understands the tools of the trade that, it's an everyday thing. Sure, I have a very thriving practice. It's okay if one judge looks down on me once. As a junior, it's like very grilling because it becomes the embarrassment of your life over there. Like,
You get nightmares about it. You do.
Yeah, like I used to work till 3, 4 in the night during my first 3 years after passing out from the law school. And in the morning, we used to be there at the Supreme Court at 10:30 for mentioning and everything. And like let's say you forget that list of dates or you maybe botch up a date. Like instead of 2013, you end up writing 2018. And the judge will look on your senior like, what is this, sir? And then your senior like, what is this, man? And then like, you'll probably have a lot of trauma for the next 5-6 weeks.
And 5-6 drafts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and every time you will be submitting a draft to your senior, you will be dreading that अभी ये चिल्लाएगा, अभी ये मेरे को बोलेगा कि मैं कुछ मेहनत नहीं कर रहा हूँ. And then like you will start dreading कि okay, my salary is not being justified. And the pain points of like just simply passing out of law school into a law practice is that the whole process is overwhelming in terms of क्या मिलता है. अभी यहाँ पे सीन होता है कि you turn up in the college at 8 in the morning, attend your lectures at 4, and then like you have the entire day to literally watch Friends, watch Netflix and things like that, because that's what thing is, and maybe apply for internships left, right and center. When the exams are there, you want to be friends with the right kind of people so that they are giving you all the notes that they have. They're teaching you कि क्या होना चाहिए इस particular case में, और maybe रट्टा लगाना. And then you enter this profession of litigation where you're required to be in court by 10 in the morning. Then once court gets over, you're supposed to be in office at 4. And then when office is there, you're supposed to be in office till 10. And then after that, you're supposed to start preparing for the next day.
And nobody prepares you for that kind of life in while you're in college. Nobody prepares you.
Yeah, and for me, the only option was that I couldn't really understand that while having a stable pocket money when I was in college, a very good life, doing everything that I could possibly imagine in terms of the masti, I wasn't able to adjust to that 2,500 rupees a month salary, which was being offered to me on pennies like for the dollar, and that was truly the case. Because the simple rent of a place that I used to rent at that time was 15,000 rupees. And that whole process is that the Indian parents' mindset is that, अच्छा हमने अब तुम्हें पढ़ा दिया, school करवा दिया, college करा दिया, now you're on your own. And asking for that 10,000 rupees, that 5,000 rupees is like very heart-wrenching at that time, because you're like, अच्छा अब मैंने सब कुछ मस्ती कर लिया, मस्ती का time खत्म हो गया, अब कमाने का time शुरू हो गया है. And the whole process of just asking 5,000 rupees कि मेरा इस बार बिजली का बिल ज़्यादा आ गया क्योंकि मैंने AC चला लिया था. Like it starts weighing down on you so heavily because of this sheer angle of independence that you truly start absorbing in the first place.
Yeah.
And while that got to me, and for me it was just about now fighting for the next drafts, ensuring that I am troubling each and every senior around me, my professional seniors are telling them that I'll draft this notice for 1,000 rupees, I'll make this petition for 2,000 rupees, to somehow managing that I was able to ask my senior that, hey, you know what, like I'm not going to work for less than 30 because that's the basic minimum, and on top of that I want a cut, and on top of that I want matters.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the seniors in the litigation industry are just ruthless. They have been born and bred as hound dogs who are just out there in the courts to kill and get their matters settled by getting that notice, getting that stay order. And it's not even their fault because they have been bred like that. Like that's the kind of environment that they've come from, where pedagogy was, padhane ka tarika was sticks and stones, to a far more elevated society where now encouraging curiosity, encouraging debate is something jahan pe there is a lot of wellness in question. There's a lot of factors at play which say ki acha, my junior shouldn't probably kill himself. My junior probably should feel happy. It's good to order him food once in a while, and things like that like got introduced when we were in the profession. Right?
That's true. That's true.
So while I see that we have been through the learning process, but in order to just tell the fourth year students that 3 things that they should have, like I think that an iPad is absolutely necessary at this point of time with the app Liquid Text on it.
Absolutely. I was just going to say.
Like,
it's a game changer.
And if you don't have that, like you're going to be left behind.
Yeah.
Then one more thing which I think is absolutely necessary is that you should be very ready with Google Workspaces. If you're not handy with Google Workspaces, you will probably be struggling with, again, attaching attachments to your emails. And that shared workspace, shared drafting experience which is going on right now, you'll again miss out on that.
Yeah.
And a lot of firms have now adapted that into their practice.
Right.
So Shivankar, what do you think are like 3 things which are like technologically one cannot do without it? Like it's absolutely necessary at this point of time.
Anshul, I think that I am such an old school guy that I like to still carry my notebook and my piece of blank paper on which I scribble notes, because I was that law student also who would go into class, take out a piece of A4 paper and literally have my lecture notes saying lecture number so and I would come back and I would put it in my file folder. Eventually, for every lecture, I'd have 2 to 3 sheets of A4 paper. And for me, revising my lecture was basically just going through my A4 sheets. Now, that had its advantage and disadvantage. The disadvantage was, since it was my scribbles, no one else could understand or share my notes, even though I wanted to share it with my roommate. They would look at it and be like, "Okay, kya likha hai? I don't understand it." So yes, maybe having electronic notes. I saw it the first time in 2011 when I went to Canada as an exchange student. And I saw that everyone had laptops open. For me, it was a new experience, because laptop opens would mean that you could possibly do anything and everything without the faculty ever coming to know what is happening in front of them. And our faculties were so old school. I mean, we had exceptional faculty. Some of them were just, they would teach you by their body language and eye contact. They would not even open the Bare Act because the Bare Act was so deeply embedded in their heads. The fundamentals were so strong. So that is the kind of place where I came from. Having said that, I do realize now that the practice of law requires iPads, MacBooks, PDFs. And yes, these are important, but still I wouldn't say that these are absolutely crucial. I mean, these are skills you can pick up in a couple of months, if not weeks. Like when I started working at a law firm, I did not understand what changes in DV mean. What is a red line? What is a black line? But for a smart person, 10 days in, you realize what is what. So, technologically, I don't think you have skills which any law school will teach you, apart from one skill. And that skill is how to search your databases. Now, the secret of actually good research is how to use your Manupatras, your High Online, your JSTOR. Because every software uses a proprietary search natural processing language, or NPL. Now, I don't know, as law students here, they know what NPL is. But essentially, natural process language, or NPL, is how they train the new AI chatbots to function. How do machines talk like a language? And if you can put in your search query in that language, your level of efficiency, quality of research, you can do what people spend in 6 hours, you can finish in 1.5 hours.
Right.
So the only kind of skill that you should know, at least technologically as per me, is how to search on case law databases.
Wonderful. Becomes quite crucial, and I think these skills come in handy. Moving on, I lay that
Law students should not do unpaid internships.
like I feel they are a waste of time. They are disguised employment, and they don't even let you learn the skill while you're interning. What do you think that law schools should now, or law students should start saying no to unpaid internships?
How many people here are okay with unpaid internships? Let's just have a raise of hands. Anyone? Everyone wants money.
Guys, is there anybody who's okay with an unpaid internship?
No one. Who is? Someone said yes. I mean, the whole point of having a bunch of lawyers together is you have the confidence to raise your hand and back up what you think with a logical argument. There is no wrong answer, but in any case, what is the fees of this law school, Anshul, when you were studying here?
77,000 per semester.
That comes to about 1.5 lakhs excluding hostel fees.
Yeah.
What is it now?
I'm sure applying the 10% increment will be somewhere around 85.
Anyone can give us a number. 90,000. That means 180. And if you have to do the mess, do you have a mess fee deposit?
No, I wasn't in the hostel, and neither was most of the guys around in my my batch.
So let's round it out to about 2 lakhs for 5 years. That comes to about 10 lakhs.
10 lakhs.
Yeah. Then on top of that, you add the rent for the flat or the PG that you make. Then you also add your Zomato orders. It costed me somewhere around 37 lakhs to do my degree.
37 lakhs.
I was living an extra weekend life.
How much did you order?
But that's okay.
Quite
Moving
a
on,
lot,
coming to
clearly.
And now I need to know what you ordered.
No. Moving on, and let's come back to the point. Your point being that after investing, let's say 25 lakh rupees on a law degree, the point being what?
How many people here they're ready for arguing in courts if I give you a brief tomorrow at RERA? Or if I were to give you a brief for the Delhi High Court, how many people here would say that they're ready to argue in front of a judge? And this is not a moot court argument. This will be a proper brief where a partition suit will be given, where 4 members of the family as co-partners want division of the property. You have the Partition Act of 1932 applying, and someone asks you to argue on merits. How many people here think they're ready to argue on merits?
Well, if I'm being paid.
If you are not ready to argue on merits, then on what basis do you want to get paid? Just because you spent X amount of money giving money to your law school, you think anyone else is justified in giving money to you. Just because you are out of pocket, therefore someone else also must be out of pocket. Is that your argument?
No.
Then
I mean, majority of the argument.
So why don't we ask these guys, since none of you said that you're okay with an unpaid internship, clearly you guys think that if you get to intern, there should be some commensurate compensation, remuneration, or a stipend, whatever that should come to you. So what are the reasons? Like, what are the ideas that you guys have in your head? Why don't we hear some of that?
everyone knows Section 7 of the Transfer of Property Act. Everyone knows considerations is payable under Section 2D of the Contract Act. Everyone knows merger schemes under 230, 232 of the Companies Act. That is all available on Google. Your education is nothing special. That is all available on Google. So if a client comes to you and he tells you, I have done my research, I know what the law is. How can you help me out? What new addition do you bring to the table? You can't argue and you're not.
Let's lighten up a little bit, and let's ask a very normal question. Can I have somebody from the audience stand up and tell us about an internship, and what would they like their ideal internship to be like? What do they think they want out of that internship in terms of money, in terms
Absolutely.
of experience, or anything else? Anybody? You, sir. Yeah, sure. Can we give the mic to? Can I get your name?
If Kapil Sibal calls me up and tells me that he wants some nice English on an argument regarding the Citizenship Act, forget unpaid internships, I'll work in my underwear. If I'm getting to learn from someone like that, I'll happily do an unpaid internship. I mean, you lived an extravagant life in your college. We have been living pretty much the same. And we don't care if we get to 2,500 or 5,000 rupees just because there's someone who became a lawyer before us, a decade before us, and just wants some interns who keep rubbing his ego. But if there's something like that, then of course the payment will be much higher. But if you're getting to learn that charisma when you argue in the court, when Shivanka was bombarding us with those sections, of course, no normal functioning human can remember all of this all at the same time. But there's a certain way of saying things.
Absolutely.
There's a way when even the judges can get intimidated.
Yes.
If I'm getting to learn that skill, I'd rather pay for that internship.
So,
Interesting.
in
He
clear
wants to
term-
pay for a good internship.
I get it. I think that.
He's saying, here, take my money. You seen that meme?
But at the cost of that money, he also wants that experience of learning the skills under the tutelage of probably a senior like Kapil Sibal, Mukul Rohatgi, Salve, and all those stalwarts. Or on the other hand, he'd want an experiential argument where he's arguing the matter himself in court, if I'm not wrong, right? So, if I break it down, that experience essentially breaks down to one, you're not more about the court craft, because if you truly wanted to learn the arguments, you would be more than happy to work with any of the lawyers who are good, not just Sybil, right?
Absolutely.
So there is a star power that's involved over there. Two, the networking effect. You feel that once you are interning with Kapil Sibal, you will be able to work with other similarly placed people, like I mentioned before. And third, like you already know, like Sibal pays 2 lakh rupees a month to his junior, and you have the opportunity to be able to transfer that. And while you did make that point very clear that we come from privileged families, and I agree that we all come from privilege. None of the people over here, including people from the production, are struggling for roti, pani, and all those things. So we can't act like our life depends on the fact कि हम कल दिहाड़ी पे काम करने जाएंगे और पेशी लेके आएंगे नहीं आएंगे. But the whole fact comes that all of us are after the same things: that excellence, that success, that money. Like today, if I say that your next job offers you a Ferrari and a mansion in Sundarnagar or Defense Colony or something, you would want it, right? Or you would want that lifestyle where you're dating a Victoria's Secret model. You would want to live that life where you are representing clients from Bollywood as a lawyer. Like you want to represent Aryan Khan. So you want to earn that senior advocate's gown. You want to be offered judgeship. So I think all of us can agree on the fact that A, we are all after success. Two, we aren't as hungry as we used to be when people were fighting for food, water, and shelter.
I agree.
Three, that drive can only come with when you are actually actively working towards increasing your drive to achieve all those things. Now, how does that drive come when you're already sitting in privilege where you know कि मेरा महीने का 3 लाख, 4 लाख, 10 लाख रुपए किराया आ रहा है, मेरे को तो काम करने की जरूरत नहीं है. And that is when you lose the battle, because which actually makes me come to this next point, that how do you treat law? Like you can treat law as an education that you can piggyback on it and then start practicing as a lawyer or as an in-house counsel, or irrespective of whatever pursuits you have in life. You want to be a politician, you want to be a property dealer, you want to just assist your father's business, you want to be a hustler and like start your own entrepreneurial venture. Having a law as a discipline is different from pretty much every other discipline out there, because A, it gives you the knowledge about everyday things कि तुम्हें क्या करना है, किस तरीके से करना है. Two, it gives you that intimidating power on the table with every conversation you have, be it with a policeman, be it with any private party. They are scared because they don't want to make a statement, or they don't want to say something that can infuriate you, because they automatically think that इसके तो पुलिस वालों के साथ जुगाड़ है. And anybody who's successfully hustling is leveraging on these three things. Like, you want to be a politician and you think that you have a very settled life, your dad's an MP or an MLA, and you think that doing nothing will also get you that same seat. Sure, it might, but you'll never make the CM or you'll never be the PM, because that drive is absent now. And my batch, we had people from every corner. We had people from political backgrounds, from bureaucratic backgrounds, from business backgrounds, from modest backgrounds, from just hustler backgrounds, like people whose father are still hustling hard day and night to make ends meet, and still the child is like also studying over here. And while that batch got placed really well, that one of the students ended up working at UN, one of them ended up being the general counsel for Adobe, and similarly other people also ended up becoming great people in their walks of life. One of them is a very successful property dealer based out of Golf Course Road, Gurgaon. And the only thing common between all these people who are doing well and are now, aiming for a certain settled lifestyle are the fact that they piggybacked on all the skills that they could get during their practical training of internships and the moment they were out of law school.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, to me, the practice of law is acquisition of power. So, for example, you want to, let's say, pursue real estate, but what broker / real estate agent will you be if you do not know your provisions of RERA?
Correct.
If you want to tomorrow, let's say, have a political career, what good are you as a political candidate if you do not know that any conviction over 2 years can debar you from your seat in the Legislative Assembly or the MP, whatever it may be, under the People's Representations Act? So, at some level, you're acquiring knowledge, and knowledge is power. So, as long as you're physically present in class and if you're listening to your lecture, you're certainly acquiring knowledge. And somewhere to me, the practice of law is the acquisition of this power. Now, for example, just to give you an offbeat example, not like it has happened with me, but I got a call from a student of this university, and he said that I was sitting on the co-driver's seat, and I was with another friend. We had both left university. I was informed that there is a wine shop which is close by Anshul. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So he tells me that I picked up a beer to have on the way home, and my friend said that he will drop me at my residence in Sona Road. And whilst I was having the beer, and my friend was not, mind you, we were stopped by the local Nakabandi or the check post around somewhere here, I'm not sure where. And the cop asked us that you are sitting in your car and you're drinking, and that is an offense, and I need you to take you to the Thana. And he called me up to ask me, and he was not even a law student. He said, is it allowed if I sit on the co-driver's seat and have a beer, whereas the driver is sober? What do you think the answer is? Are you allowed to have a beer on the co-driver's seat? Mind you, the driver, not the driver, the co-driver. Why?
How many of you say yes and how many of you say no? How many of you say yes? Can we just get a show of hands? This is just an opinion you're expressing.
Yeah.
Based on what you think. So there is, we can...
I just want to see hands.
Yeah.
So okay, there's one gentleman here. There are two friends over there at the back. So everyone think it's no, it's not allowed. Show me your hand, yeah? Who says it's not allowed? Why is it not allowed, friend? Have you heard of this act called Delhi Excise Act? Have you heard of drinking and creating nuisance is an offense over there? Do you know that? Drinking in public place. Now, how many of you think, or rather are you aware of the judgment of the Delhi High Court, which said that you have to wear a mask in your car because it is a public space? Remember during COVID, there was a judgment.
Justice Pratibha M. Singh.
Yes? Right? There was a judgment that said you have to wear a mask even in your car because a car is a public space. Now, logically, if you think about it, if a car is a public space and drinking in public space is creating nuisance, by that logic, you're not allowed to sit in your car and even drink on the co-driver's seat. Food for thought?
That makes sense, yeah. So no drinking in cars, that's for sure. And
No, but it doesn't end over here.
It doesn't. Yeah.
But under the Motor Vehicle Act and under the IPC, there is no offense in which a guy at the back seat can have a beer. Right? So depending on what your knowledge of the law is and what you tell the cop, he got away. He said it is not an offense under the Motor Vehicle Act for a co-driver to have a beer. If you want to take me to the Thana, you take me. It is a bailable offense. You will have to give me a bail. However, if there is a fine, I'm ready to give you the fine and get out of it. The poor police constable was so taken aback that he said, okay, listen, I'm letting you go this time, okay?
Issued a caution.
But I'll speak to your parents the next time. So, knowledge of law is power. And knowledge of any law is power in that sense. So, your 5 years here will be well spent if you position it accordingly.
Well, I applaud the guy who called you up to ask कि गाड़ी में beer पीना crime है या नहीं है, and he was ready to challenge the police guy saying कि नहीं, this is not a crime. And this is exactly the kind of curiosity you would even need in the first place. Like, a time for traditional practice of law is like sort of a bygone era. Like learning CRPC, IPC evidence and all these things are like sort of old and the market is saturated. India has 20 lakh lawyers, 20,000 judges and close to a staff of 50,000 secretary, clerks and everything. So with that kind of population, you can't really expect that you will enter the law field and you will excel as the guy who's going to make millions and millions of dollars and be in a settled life and all that. So you have to take the alternative routes and you have to be more focused in comparison. So, what do you think are the growing fields of law that one should move forward to or look forward to in order to excel? Like आज से 5 साल या 10 साल पहले पूछा जाता तो कहा जाता कि यार तू एक फील्ड चुन ले, तू सिविल लॉ कर या तू क्रिमिनल लॉ कर ले या एक काम कर तू कंपनी लॉ में चला जा. So now it's far more specialized that even in criminal law you will have to pick a specific specialization.
Like there's white collar crime and
Yes.
then there is other sorts of.
So what do you think are the 3 most promising fields of law जिसके लिए a law student should look forward to work in order to like be at the top of his game 5 years or 10 years from now?
Urvi?
I think technology for sure. I think technology is very up and coming because when we were in law school, the only law related to technology was the IT Act, which is all that we knew about, and then it was the Shreya Singhal judgment. So of course that was in the news, but other than that, there is nothing much that we were made to read up on at least. So I think technology definitely is one of the up and coming things. What other laws?
I think that depending on how much risk you want to take, you should pick up your area of law. So if you want to play it safe, you want to have a traditional career,
Yeah.
as Anshul said and as Urvi mentioned.
But a traditional career will get you nowhere except maybe a stable job by the end of 5 years where you get 70.
That's fine,
80,000.
Anshul. To a lot of people here, a stable job at the end of 5 years is what they want.
A stable job for the purpose of keeping a balanced and disciplined life, sure, but 50-60,000 at the end of it doesn't really make a
No,
difference.
but taking a step back, I have another question. That here we're talking about what, like you said, if you want to have a more traditional approach and a traditional career, then and if you want to play safe, then there are a certain set of safe choices to make. However, if your risk appetite is a lot more, then you can go out there and experiment. But taking a step back, do we often get that choice at the beginning, at the threshold of your career? Do we even get that choice to decide, okay, this is, in terms of knowledge, are we that empowered
No.
as law
Absolutely
graduates?
no.
Yeah?
In fact,
and in terms of opportunities, are we that empowered?
Absolutely no. In fact, the longer you take to take a choice that I want to specialize in this, the more deferred your specialization becomes, and therefore, like your whole life itself. I think the 3 most promising fields of law that one should work in is 1, drugs law. Drugs is a promising thing. India has already taken a stand before the UN that cannabis will be legalized. There are already research labs that are being set up. MDMA, ecstasy, LSD, all these things are now being introduced into the common day life for therapeutic purposes as well as recreational purposes. Canada and US have already agreed to it. Now, while a lot of drugs are prevalent in law schools, universities, colleges, in fact, across Delhi as well as in India and everywhere, not a lot of people have a lot of knowledge about drugs, like what drugs does what. Are these stimulants? Are these uppers? Are these psychedelics? What do they do? How do they fire up the neurons in your brain? How is the government coming to the conclusion that these should be banned? A lot of studies in the past have indicated that psychedelics actually help you go through trauma in life. But why isn't the government accepting it? So what do? We set up a research lab. These research labs want legal consultants who can set up their liaising with the government. When you are sitting and the only person who can liaison with the government because you possess the knowledge of how cocaine works or how MDMA works or how LSD works or how crystal meth works, you can actively advise not just the government but private parties who want to exploit these business opportunities. That's 1. 2 is the sex industry, which I think is just something standing at the brim of, again, going into that rocket load of explosion where a lot of things, a lot of commercial opportunities will come. 1, commercialization of sex workers and giving them a legal status is something that will take center stage. 2, the sex tech industry where all porn sites such as Pornhub, X videos are about to set up their server rooms in India, and they want people in India to help them learn what sort of content can be published, what sort of content needs to be removed, whether the government will monitor it, and if they monitor it, what is the kind of authority. Let's say for under IT Act, you need to have a IT officer, जहाँ पे Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, सबके nodal officers चाहिए. Similarly, Pornhub, Xvideos, and the similar porn sites, which are like the porn world is run by 3 companies majorly. One is Xami, one is similarly MindGeek and other companies. But again, these companies aren't there for having fun and making you watch porn. These companies are making an insane amount of money. Like they're valued at billions of dollars. When you're dealing with things like that and you're dealing with a mass population of India with 1.4 billion heads, imagine the amount of importance a lawyer can have when they know how the porn world works and they can actively liaison with the nodal heads.
Anshul, I don't know if you know, but porn is blocked in our country.
Yes, and at the same point of time, every porn site that has ever been banned in India has a mirror website which can be accessed and is being accessed too. It got banned 3 years ago, and ever since then, porn consumption in the country has gone by 20% by the year. 3, for the first time in India, the sex toy stores have actually taken center stage, and they have websites which are registered with the government of India. So when you have iambeshram.in running over here, I won't really, give myself the clouded judgment that porn is banned or sex is banned, because 1, it's not banned. 2, everybody's using it, and 3, it's increasing. So to just sit back and see, अच्छा ये तो ban कर रखा है, is like one saying कि मेरे को इस business opportunity को नहीं देखना है, while somebody else is more than happy to come, earn money out of it, and make sure that they're.
No, this is, see, the parallel to my mind that I can draw is years ago, before the whole corporate law culture started, law and lawyers, the only thing we would do is graduate out of your colleges and then go practice in courts, जिसको traditionally वकालत बोलते हैं. That was the straitjacket formula in which all legal professionals, within which they practiced. Then years later, as it transitioned, we realized that, okay, there is a thing called MNCs, and MNCs are entering the market because it's become a global economy now, and every company that is going to set up shop in India, every bank that sets up shop in India, and literally everybody needs lawyers. And whether it's a hospital or a bank or or an NGO or any other form of company, and that is something which is very unknown to us back then because nobody knew what corporate law was. I mean, I come from a very small town. I come from Patna. And back then, before law school happened, we didn't know. I mean, in the early 2000s, we didn't know that this is the new culture which is catching on. And which is probably what is adding a lot more glamour to law. Because otherwise, law was wearing your black and white clothes, going to the court, making your arguments and coming back home. Which also meant that it was a very, very privileged profession. Because initially, you wouldn't get a lot of money. Your entry into the system, into the market of litigation, so as to speak, was so difficult because of the artificial barriers that were put in place. Because it was it was relatively easier for people who came from legal legacies or legal backgrounds, so as to speak, to enter the system. All of which underwent a sea change with the advent of, MNCs and in-house jobs and corporate jobs and things like that. And it was very alien then. We did not have a very good understanding of them. So there the glamorizing factor was that, the money is a lot higher and things like that. And this is also something we can also practice law while sitting in an AC within 4 walls and sitting on your desk and doing this. And you don't only have to run around in courts come rain, hail or sunshine. So that novelty of that was very well accepted by everybody. And now this is a similar kind of novelty, whether we talk about drugs, whether we talk about porn, whether we talk about commercial sex work. These are all things, one, either they are almost entirely or partially banned. 2, even if they are not, we look down upon these subject matters because these are subject matters which have a lot of taboo associated with it. And but at the same time, these are things which happen, which are there, which instead of turning a blind eye to, I think we all need to own up to the fact that it's all a part of the same ecosystem that we live in.
Absolutely.
And therefore, instead of turning a blind eye or instead of trying to repress it and suppress it, it's better to own up to it. It's better to regularize it, so you can exercise more control and you can regulate the entire system. Because, and this is what we were discussing before our session, that prohibition in the history of any country in the world, in any subject matter, whether you talk about prohibition in terms of alcohol or any other subject matter, it doesn't work. As a model, it cannot work. It will give you short-term benefits. It can help you reach short-term goals, but in the longer run, it's not sustainable, because there will be all sorts of undercurrents and all sorts of black markets. And again, this concept applies to tangible things like alcohol and drugs, but also as a concept that wherever you try to criminalize something and repress and suppress and criminalize, it has its own way of coming up in the cycle, and it has its own way of resurfacing. So it's better to regularize it and get it out in the open.
More so importantly, I think there's an insane amount of money that's to be made over there, and like anybody who's not doing that is like just simply saying that, hey, I don't want the money, and well, we all want the money.
See, money, Anshul, is one aspect of it. It could, for other people, it could be other motivating factors as well.
I mean, we are the generation of 2023. We are like serial hustlers. We grow in the land of influencers like Andrew Tate and Logan Paul, people who have been making content. We live in the land of Carrie Minati and Bhuvan Baum making a good amount of money from selling merch on YouTube. When you're living in that kind of an ecosystem, you can't possibly think that dialing it back and restricting yourself to less experimentation in life. अब इसको मैं सिंपल करके बता देता हूँ. भैया बम नहीं फोड़ोगे तो कुछ नहीं होगा. It's as simple as that. 20 lakh lawyers exist in the country. Every year, more than 2 lakh students enter the litigation or legal industry. A High Court delegates what? 130, 140, maybe 200 senior advocates a year. With that kind of a success rate, it's more difficult than UPSC now. And when you're fighting those kind of odds, you have to experiment. And when I say experiment, it means the experiment not that is being provided to you by a university, by a chamber, by an office. It means your active experimentation with your career, with your life, where you pick, let's say for example, I am personally very infatuated with the NDPS law right now. And I see myself as the guy who's going to be helping research labs and pharmacy industry heads to set up their to set up their MDMA dispensing counters. And I know for a fact that this is going to be a very big opportunity. But at the same point of time, it involves me to do what? It involves me to sit down with drug dealers in their labs where they are not just manufacturing these drugs, but also to understand their psyche. When I am able to understand their psyche, I am not judging them कि drugs बेचने वाले गंदे होते हैं या sex करने वाले गंदे होते हैं या money launderers for that matter. Like everybody looks down upon money launderers and rapists. But like when you're dealing with a rape case as a judge, and a judge told me this, he just cannot look at it from the demonic angle. He has to humanize a rapist. How do you humanize a rapist? How do you? You can't. I couldn't. Then he told me that all you need to do is just listen to a story. And then he'll tell you that, hey man, just the sheer fact that he was brought up like this, never had interaction with a girl, doesn't know what touching a girl feels like. His mother hasn't hugged him for the past 20, 25 years. He was psychologically not prepared to understand what happens when he interacts with the opposite gender. When that happens, you don't have the option to look at it from the point of view that let's jail him for 20 more years where he'll have no more interaction so that by the time he comes out, he's going to do that again. You have to give him exposure. And when you are going down that line where you're talking about giving exposure to a rapist, everybody is going to judge. Everybody wants to look down upon it from the angle that that's a controversial statement. People will shun you. People will outcast you. But look at what retributive form of justice and jurisprudence has gotten so far. You prison a guy, you punish them, you create 2 more. When you create 2 more, what do? You create more jails. Do you know if NDPS was supposed to be implemented in the country according to the government standards, 3% of India's population, that is how many people, 4 crore people will be jailed. Assuming 10% will get out on public, on immunity clauses, that's still 3 crore 60 lakhs. The prison population of India is 4 lakh heads. That's 10 into 10, 100 times. So, agar NDPS law actually आज implement हो गया, we don't have the infrastructure. Courts will be overloaded. Jail systems will be overcrowded by 100%.
They already are.
I mean, yeah, you obviously think very strongly for NDPS and you are very emphatic about the users and the producers. But just to also offer our friends here certain safe options, I will also recommend more traditional career routes like arbitration, because ultimately our courts are so overburdened by civil and contract disputes that private dispute resolution mechanisms like arbitration will take center stage, where you pay money to an arbitrator or a specialized judge to decide your case rather than go and add to the rising docket of civil cases.
Yeah.
So definitely arbitration is another up and coming resolution for civil.
It's a promising field in the traditional practice.
In a
of law,
traditional
I agree.
practice sense.
We have one question, if we might.
Just allow me to complete the second field that I was going to say. The second one I feel, and as a practitioner of internet law, and I see a lot of activity on the internet, is IPR. And it ties in closely with technology in that sense. So everything to do with your copyright, your trademark, your content-wise, your UPI frauds, your sextortions, revenge porn, the list is endless, and I've worked on it quite deeply. So these are also fields in which you require people with an adequate understanding of both law, society, and private law. So definitely those are also traditional routes which you could explore, given the experience and breadth that you have, is what I would suggest. I mean, I think we need to cater to the entire audience over here.
Absolutely. I agree. And in no way it was an advertisement that go venture out into the world of drugs. It was more from the angle that philosophies exist. Before doing drugs, there is a lot of law that needs to be dealt with. So deal with the law first rather than dealing with drugs. And I advocate that actively as my PR. However, we come to the first question, please.
It's not really a question. I mean, I'm just surprised. Just the term of drugs. What a vibrant discussion this just one word can give rise to. And अगर सिर्फ ड्रग पर इतनी बात हो रही है, यहाँ पर रेप का भी जिक्र था, यहाँ पर कितने सारे क्राइम्स का जिक्र था, यहाँ पर हमारी जेल के पॉपुलेशन का जिक्र था. हम इस बात को मतलब एक तरह से नजरअंदाज कर रहे हैं कि भारत के लॉ में अभी एक पूरा यूनिवर्स बाकी है रिफॉर्म का, और उसके लिए बंदों की जरूरत पड़ेगी.
Absolutely. Policy workers.
Policy was actually, another up and coming avenue.
When we were discussing about how saturated law has become, और जब हम बात कर रहे थे कि पैसा नहीं है लॉ में, तो रिचर्ड सास्किन की एक बुक थी टुमारोज लॉयर्स, और उसमें उन्होंने बड़े अच्छे से बताया था कि कैसे लॉ का प्रोफेशन इतना एक्सक्लूसिव है कि जो टॉप नॉच है सिर्फ वो पैसा ले जाती है और जूनियर्स खाक छानते रहते हैं, और कैसे आने वाले समय में एक्सक्लूसिविटी खत्म होगी. मगर अगर हम इस पर्सपेक्टिव को थोड़ा सा और बड़ा करें and look at what law school turns us into as a person, I think these 20 lakh lawyers in India, they are some of the most dangerous people in India.
Yeah.
Dangerous people. I mean, these people have seen a lot of things, and there is barely anything that can surprise them anymore. ऐसा किस प्रोफेशन में होता है, कौन से इंजीनियर या बिजनेसमैन ऐसा कर पाएंगे कि सुबह उन्होंने अपने क्लाइंट से ये डील करी थी कि 10 नहीं 8 साल की सजा होगी और दोपहर में फैमिली के साथ में ब्रंच पर जाएंगे. जो वो कहावत है कि दिल के नाम पे पत्थर और दिमाग के नाम पे बर्फ वकीलों में होती है.
That is actually the benchmark of judging how successful you are as a lawyer. You have to go to therapy, like by the time you're 6 or 7 years into practice.
Absolutely.
Because it desensitizes you. Like I have had clients, like if storytelling is something, a client comes to me and tells me that my husband raped me and like it's been a really sad marriage, मैं क्या करूँ, I want divorce. And it's a pro bono matter, so like like you're already a little distance ki itna mehnat nahi kara jayega. You can't ask your junior to spend time on it and like draft and like then do all that due diligence which you would do in a very high stakes matter. So I did it. 2 years later, I experienced something that, like, after working for 2 years, appearing in courts almost 15 times, that the rape accused and the complainant are now married again and they want to peacefully live with each other. And this is the kind of experience that I come to that. So imagine like what will go through your head when you're looking at this face for whom you worked for 2 years for free, fighting a rape case, a divorce case, a maintenance case, and then he tells you that नहीं वो थोड़ी misunderstanding हो गई थी. देख तू पागल है क्या यार, मतलब तेरे को पता है मतलब मैंने कितना टाइम लगाया है, अपने लैपटॉप पे ड्राफ्टिंग करी है तेरे लिए 125 की एप्लीकेशन बना के, लाइक कंटेम्प्ट फाइल होने करने वाला था मैं हाई कोर्ट में तेरी की, तेरे को पैसा नहीं मिल रहा है महीने का 10,000 रुपए, एंड तू अब शादी करके बैठ गई है. You become so desensitized to things in your family so that when your relative or somebody tells you कि हाँ उसका divorce है, हाँ ठीक है कोई नहीं, and then like things get really weird because they don't look at you from the sensitive point of view कि ये sensitive नहीं है.
No, but
It's
also
like what happens. Sorry, it's very similar to what happens with doctors
exactly.
also.
I was about to say.
Yeah, because all sorts of different people have different levels of empathy or lack of empathy while they're growing up, and all such different people come together in different law schools, and we enter as a certain form of ourselves and we exit as a completely different version of ourselves, and then what the profession teaches you is a wholly different thing altogether. So I remember that I remember growing up as somebody with a lot of empathy and sympathy, and I remember when I interacted with my first domestic violence client, and I had heard stories from my other seniors who had worked on rape cases and had read gory descriptions of those violent incidents on files, and that had given them nightmares. And I, while I had a lot of empathy, I didn't realize I did. I thought that, okay, you know what, this is just an academic exercise and I can totally do this. It is not going to affect me. It's just another person. But it's very different when a client looks you in the eye and
Asks you.
yeah, and asks you that, or tells you rather, in a very descriptive fashion that, okay, this is what has happened. When I was expecting, my husband kicked me here, he took my head and rammed it against the wall, etc., and shows you her live bruises. That moment hits you very differently.
This happened to me in corruption cases. Client threw a lot of money and he's like, I need this done. And I'm like, बहुत पैसा है.
Yeah, so
And
it's
all that moral dilemma, those professional ethics, like they come into question, when you're settled. So like, ये देश को खराब तो कर रहा है, लेकिन ये मेरे को 5 लाख रुपए दे रहा है. तो क्या मैं क्या करूँ?
Yeah, but I'm on the other end of the spectrum, because when something like this happens, you get so shaken up. You can't sleep for nights together because this constantly plays in your mind. And then you go for matters, and there's a different level of passion that comes inside of you, because you think you're on the right side of things, you're doing the right thing, and you're fueled by that passion. You want to help somebody out. At least that's how it works with me. But then you realize that case after case after case, like you said, that your client got to a compromise with the person.
Yeah.
Similar thing happened, and I felt that vicariously through her journey, I was angrier at her husband or her family for putting her through this than even she was, which was not my place to do that, right? I was not supposed to have that sort of empathy. I was supposed to be a counselor, her advisor legally, and fight for her legal rights.
Right.
And that is when you realize that, okay, I need to now take a back seat. This is not a healthy way to deal with things, and this is clearly not sustainable, because if I keep associating with each of my clients, somebody is going to be a victim of domestic violence, somebody is going to be a victim of sexual harassment. I do a lot of matters where in the labor law sector, where I represent a lot of workmen. There are people who've been without their jobs for years together. I feel for them, but you learn how to be detached.
Absolutely.
And being detached doesn't mean being disinterested.
Absolutely.
Because I think after a certain point, when you are detached, you also gain more objectivity towards the situation and you can do your job better. So, but it's difficult. And like you said, after 5-6 years or 6-7 years of being into practice, you definitely need to go into therapy because this lack of sensitivity and lack of empathy then starts to translate and manifest in different forms in your personal life.
Yes, relationship खराब हो
in
जाएगा.
your interactions.
Your
with-
wife or your girlfriend will say that, why aren't you saying anything? I was like, I've seen too much.
Yeah.
नहीं हो रहा है. And I was
तभी-
like, यार ये movie चल रही है. Like things stop translating into emotional actions.
तभी मेरा तो ये इस प्रति तो ये मेरा जो प्रचार मेरे को जो लगता है इस प्रति कि मैं तो डिवोर्स के केस करता ही नहीं हूँ. क्योंकि डिवोर्स के केस करना जहाँ आपके बच्चे इन्वॉल्व होते हैं वो दोनों पार्टियों के लिए बहुत ज़्यादा इमोशनली ड्रेनिंग हो जाता है. और जब आपका क्लाइंट इमोशनली ड्रेन्ड होता है तो जाहिर से बात है कि वो ड्रेनेज आपको भी इफेक्ट करती है और किसी प्रकार से आपको भी छूती है. तो मेरा ये पॉलिसी है कि जहाँ बच्चे इन्वॉल्व होंगे वो मैं केस नहीं उठाता, नहीं लेता, क्योंकि मैं इतना पर्सनली इफेक्टेड हो जाता हूँ और इतना मूव हो जाता हूँ कि मेरे को लगता है कि मेरे पास लिमिटेड बैंडविड्थ है इमोशनल अपनी अवेलेबिलिटी की.
Also, like family courts are one of the most dramatic courts. Like,
Oh, बहुत
you
लोग
stand
dramatic.
outside them, you'd see like,
गुड़गांव में आप
People-
फैमिली कोर्ट में मैंने इतने लोगों को रोते हुए देखा है.
like तूने मेरी घड़ी ले लिया. Like, यार यहाँ तो केस चल रहा था. Like the next thing you hear is like, जज साहब इसकी घड़ी देखो, ये 40,000 की घड़ी पहनता है और ये कह रहा है मेंटेनेंस नहीं दे सकता है. And like you'll hear the most weird things in a family court. Like, and all-
Everything about your personal life is impersonal.
Yeah,
So
and-
everything, the smallest and the most
it becomes-
intimate personal.
It becomes
details.
exciting, like as a young lawyer, like to stand just outside the family court and see कि क्या कर रहे हैं लोग अपने जीवन के साथ. Like
But it's also the. I mean, I find it's the saddest practice area of law.
Yeah.
Because especially where like you just said, especially when kids are involved, because it's so unfortunate. And sometimes you want to forget being a lawyer. You just want to be a counselor who tells these two people that listen, just sit down across the table, talk this out. You're being miserable to yourself. You're being miserable to the other person. You're being miserable to your kid or kids. And this is not going to give anybody anything. Everybody out of this is going to be a loser.
you know, but now
Nobody comes out.
यही
of
चीजें मेरे को आर्बिट्रेशन में, एनसीएलटी में, इन कोर्ट्स और इन प्रैक्टिस में मेरे को ये चीजें नहीं तंग करती और मेरे को इतना अफसोस होता भी नहीं है.
But we live like in times where we go on Netflix, log on to Delhi Crime. We go on Netflix and we log on to the most psychologically weird things that tell our brain, अच्छा, there is stimulation now. Like अब हमें मजा आ रहा है. You know, we want to know कि निठारी में क्या हुआ था. We want to know how white collar crimes end up translating to stealing and more.
तो मत करो ना
gruesome
अंशुल,
than-
डिलीट कर दो. यहाँ हैं लोग जो नहीं
So
देखते
maybe-
नेटफ्लिक्स.
maybe that could.
So exactly, no. My point is that when you're living,
देखो.
when you're living in a
तुम्हें अब
population,
देखना पसंद है ये सब, तो अब मैं क्या मतलब.
no. So I think this you can treat it either as one that I'm not meant for this, तो मैं ये नहीं करूँगा. मैं जाऊँगा अपना एक थोड़ा safe route उठाऊँगा. Two, that you become somebody who says that I'm gonna not just use it, but I'm gonna make money out of it. And when you do that, it becomes very easy because you give yourself that choice कि मेरे को क्या पसंद है. तो before I actually jump into the solutions, I take one more problem that lawyers face in their formative years was a lack of recognition when they're working for somebody senior. So this has happened to me multiple times, and sure, like taking out the details, but I was able to draft something that shut down McDonald's for 13 days in the north of India. Like 13 दिन probably 100 करोड़ों से ऊपर का नुकसान हुआ, and like everybody around me was shocked कि ये क्या कर दिया है. Stay order आ गया, newspapers cover कर लिया. My name is not there. I asked my office क्या है वो, and like good work man, like etc. But like
Heartbreaking.
it stopped over there. Like my colleagues knew it. My parents thought that I've done it, but I couldn't really tell anybody that ये 100 करोड़ों का नुकसान मैंने करवाया है, मेरे लैपटॉप पे ड्राफ्ट हुआ है.
So did you at least get a pat on the back?
Well, I mean, in front of the client, my senior said, good work, and like, that was pretty much the end of it.
There, Anshul. I'll give you a
that's-
hug later.
No, but the thing is that wasn't just one case. I've been able to draft more than 5 cases where stay orders have been secured at the last moment to stop transfer of more than 100 crores before High Court and Supreme Court all together. And I think like these are feathers in my cap कि मैंने हिला डाला है. मतलब एक बड़ा corporate entity है, उसको मैंने पकड़ लिया है, और now because of me he is going through that whole process जहाँ पे उसके पैसे बच गए हैं या उसके पैसे लग गए हैं. I feel that kind of power कि मैं किसी का कुछ भी निकाल सकता हूँ, किसी का कुछ भी उखाड़ सकता हूँ. And while I know that, because of lack of recognition by seniors in the field, I can't pitch it to a big corporate club. I can't pitch it to the Tatas and the Jindals and the Ambanis that, hey man, I'm capable of this, I need your matter. And
No, it's
then actively-
unfortunate. It's very unfortunate because it does happen a lot in our profession. Personally, I have a very different experience when it comes to this because the chamber that I came from, I come from, we were actually encouraged, given a lot of encouragement and I think my senior was one of the very few seniors perhaps, because this seems to be the experience of the masses, the general janta. But my senior, we always felt that he was very comfortable in sharing the limelight with his chamber colleagues and, giving that sort of opportunity that, okay, why don't you argue this matter because we've got such a heavy board today. And, well, of course, the chamber junior couldn't claim to want to do this as a matter of right, because this is not what your, your employment or your apprenticeship or whatever we want to call it, that's not what it entails. But therefore, we felt fortunate to be given that sort of opportunity where, you get to stand in front of the court and argue, and whether it's your first year in litigation or second year in litigation or whatever, or even like there was a very sweet experience that happened that, I'd researched some very tricky proposition, something, and I'd found some judgment, which I was really happy about. But of course, I wasn't thinking that I will get to present it, and I didn't. And it was my senior who was arguing before the Chief's Court in the Delhi High Court. And it seems that even the other judge on the bench had really asked his LRs to do that research, and their LRs hadn't managed to find anything. So when we gave him this judgment, my senior presented it to the bench, and the judge looks up at him and says, okay, Mr. So-and-so, how did you find this judgment? Because I have personally looked and I've got my LRs to look for it, and nobody could find it.
Wonderful.
And I was just sitting there, this meek little kid freshly into the profession. I'm just sitting there, I'm like, I know mera judgment hai, but mujhe thodi credit milega. But mila because my senior immediately looked at me and said, my lords, my young colleague, Miss So-and-so, has actually managed to find it. So now that kind of recognition makes up for a lot of other things which, you don't, even if you don't get in the profession, these are the small kicks that you actually work for which keep you motivated. That said, I know that that's not the norm and it doesn't happen. And it's unfortunate that it doesn't happen, because this is the kind of thing that keeps you fueled up. It keeps you motivated to keep going.
That and the bun samosa of Delhi High Court.
Oh, and the cold coffee. How could you forget the cold coffee?
If anybody's been to the Delhi High Court, you could know like what a bun samosa and cold coffee at the Delhi High Court is like.
For me, the recognition actually comes from जब जज मेरे को देख के कहता है ऑन अ पॉइंट ऑफ लॉ, कैन यू असिस्ट मी?
Absolutely.
और एनसीएलटी में तो मैं 3 बारी मतलब ऐसे पीछे बैठा हुआ हूँ लास्ट बेंच पे, अपने फ़ोन पे अपनी ज़िंदगी काट रहा हूँ, घंटे गिन रहा हूँ कि मेरा कब आएगा नंबर, और जज मेरे को देख के शक्ल से पहचान के कहता है कि मिस्टर शर्मा, हम ज़रा दुविधा में हैं, ये पार्टी ये कह रही है, ये पार्टी ये कह रही है, और हमें कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा कि इस पे पोजीशन ऑफ लॉ क्या है. सुप्रीम कोर्ट में आपने कोई जजमेंट पढ़ी है? और मैं अपने फ्री टाइम में सुप्रीम कोर्ट की जजमेंट पढ़ना पसंद करता हूँ. मैं वैसा वेला आदमी हूँ, जब मेरे पास कुछ करने को नहीं होता तो मैं इंसॉल्वेंसी पे क्या सुप्रीम कोर्ट की जजमेंट आई है देख के खोलता हूँ. तो जब वो रिकग्निशन मिलती है आपको जज से, तो आपको अच्छा लगता है कि किसी भीड़ में किसने मेरा नाम देखा, शक्ल देखी और मेरे को बुलाया. सो इट इज़ अ गुड रिकग्निशन. बट वही है, पैट ऑन द बैक है. देखेंगे आगे जाके शायद 5 साल में कुछ और बन जाए.
सही है. I think we address a lot of problems and did pour our heart out कि हमारी कितनी वाट कब लगी थी in terms of practicing and getting into the practice of law. And while a lot of philosophy was really heartfelt, something that is सालों दर साल घसीट के दिमाग में अब घुसी है कि कैसे करना है. The solutions which I think personally for me and are working and will work, and correct me if I'm wrong, we are nearing towards the end, so I'm going to take 2-3 minutes or maybe 5 minutes, and then after that, or any questions that you guys have. one thing, take your passion seriously.
Absolutely.
And when I say take your passion seriously, I mean so seriously that you can make a living out of it. And by making a living out of it, that doesn't mean that if you like badminton, that you should become the next badminton player. But if anybody in badminton sports wants to draft a contract with a sponsor, with a contract company, or with a badminton board, you're the one they look for. So when I say that if it's doing makeup, then you should know what your makeup is like. What are the standards that the government looks forward to? What is the Quality Council of India looking forward to? If it's making reels, then just content laws around the world, the IPR angle of it, the angle of whether you as an artist can copy somebody else's dhun and put it in your reel, or what happens when you infringe in that same thumka that the other person was doing. Does it infringe or not? Or what affects the monetizability? Are you going to be able to earn money out of it or not? If it is, let's say, gym, then you should know what your protein powder is supposed to be like. Is it even made from the sources as claimed? Is the nutritional ingredients in it according to the permitted standards or not? If it is, let's say, as simple as drugs, then make sure that you're talking to the most established mycologists, the most established people in the field of psychedelics. Joe Rogan के podcast पे आते हैं, Paul Stamets, Dennis McKenna, Terence McKenna. People who have not just done drugs but written books about it. And books so intense that you end up questioning your existence about how you've lived and what you've been conditioned to. So while I cannot advocate that do drugs, I can advocate that read their material, know what is doing what to you. India itself has a very rich culture of cannabis. There was a plant called Soma, like everybody knows. It's said that every year close to 500 people wander in the Himalayas in search of Soma. Now, what is Soma? It's claimed that it's a mushroom that grows on the bark of a tree that grows in the Himalayas. And 500 people every year are lost in the Himalayas just because they're searching for drugs. How you can help them as a lawyer? You can, as a lawyer, help them draft their wills, draft their deeds before they go out for their soul-searching experience.
Or you can just join them on the expedition.
I mean, that's one way
Choice
to look
is
at
yours.
it. That's one way to
Choice
look
is
at
yours.
it. But I think the common denominator is that take passion so seriously and then join law with it. The minute you join law with it, it becomes interesting. You're not stuck in the boring practice, and also you have a specialization of your own, which no other people right now would have because they just weren't smart enough at that point of time to say कि मेरे को Pornhub का lawyer बनना है. And that's what we conclude this session with. Before any of the panelists have anything to add to this,
I mean, yeah, you just be curious, yaar.
Yeah.
like that curiosity is really important, and like
Let's be curious. Like, you have to be curious with yourself, as Anshul has demonstrated. And also,
being curious like it is a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, you aren't worried for your roti pani, you aren't worried for your petrol ka kharcha, you aren't worried for your rent.
There
What
is
you're
a-
worried about is, am I going to be the next millionaire? Am I going to be the next billionaire? Is my name going to come on the Time magazine? Kya Forbes me ko cover karega, nahi karega? When you're worried about that, do you think anybody who's come in Forbes is living that traditional life? No. If they are the ones who buy miles on Trans Am the minute they get their first lakh, first 2 lakhs, first 3 lakh. They are the ones who will wander into the most, I don't know, remote locations to go for their soul searching in a tech detox. They are pulling off experiments like that on a day-to-day basis. While I'm not saying that do all of that, what I'm saying is that the moment you stop experimenting, you don't deserve the chance to make it big.
I mean, there is a world outside
Yeah.
tier 1 law firms.
Yeah, that's
I
what-
have
yeah.
done 3 years there. I'd never liked my time when I was there, and I think more people should know that outside of the top level law firms, there is a huge world. There is a couple of things Anshul mentioned. There's a couple of things I mentioned and Urvi mentioned. So be aware that there is a world and which will pay you well. You will make good money, but you have to be curious. You have to be confident. So that confidence will only come when you take baby steps, when you experiment, when you take small risks. When you take small risk, it gives you the confidence to take a big risk.
Bigger. And those will lead to bigger
And
rewards.
those bigger risks will then amplify.
Yeah.
मतलब यार
no,
डिप्रेशन
I-
सबको है आज के टाइम
there
पे
is
सब
जो-
डिप्रेस हो रखे हैं सबको क्या कहते हैं स्ट्रेस होता है, एंजाइटी होती है.
No, which is why, you know.
And what do? They watch Kapil Sharma later in the
And
night.
please,
to
for God's
quench their
sake,
thirst.
delete your social media.
No,
Those are-
I strongly advocate use your social media. To
No,
your-
I think my inputs here would be that for those of you who think that they should be off social media, go for that. For those of you who think they would much rather be on social media and get some, I mean, there's pros and cons both of being on social media and not being on social media. That's just one aspect of it. And there are also pros and cons of taking the tried and tested, rather safer approach to law and the new experimental approach to law. So ultimately, it comes down to each their own. If you think that something like an in-house job is something that gives you more satisfaction because you would much rather have relative work-life balance, then go for that. There is no judgment there. If you think that you would want to hustle in a law firm for a couple of years, like Shivankar did, I did for about 3 years in a bank and then in a law firm, go for that. But unless you keep your mind open to these experiments, you will not know where you will fit in. So I think that's the common point that we're all trying to suggest to you guys, that keep it open, be curious, ask questions. Don't stop yourself from questioning things. Like, don't just follow a norm like you're part of the rat race, like you're part of the bhed chal. You can still be a part of the race, but you can compete in the race on your own terms. You don't have to subscribe to norms which have already been simply put in place. So be choosy, be picky, be open to experimenting, and just ask questions. Don't back off from like questioning why is it a certain way? Why do I have to be in a law firm and work for 16 or 18 hours a day to be able to be given this money that makes me feel that I'm worth it? Feel free to question it. If it's not okay, it's not okay.
Be full throttle, backbencher बन रहे हो, आपस में बात कर रहे हो तो अच्छे से बात करो ताकि यहाँ तक भी सुनाई दे. पता है?
And
Do
share
it
it
with
with
passion.
us.
Like,
Yeah.
if you don't want to pay attention, pay.
Yeah, if
like,
you want to
don't pay
make-
that kind of attention that even I'm like कि मेरे को attention नहीं मिल रही है.
If you want to make
ऐसे
fun of
नहीं
my
कि
hair-
बीच में बात किया या क्या like the idea is Steve Jobs क्या किया था? Be crazy, so be crazy and
own up.
Yeah, and own
Set.
up.
Own it up.
Before we conclude, any questions about internships, jobs, etc. Anybody has about their law careers?
Please direct them to Urvi because she's taken the
Really
center.
accomplished lawyers over here. One is like Amarchand Mangaldas, Tier 1, वहाँ से निकल के छोड़ के अब कर रहा है. Urvi is impaneled with the Delhi government and the central government, and you can like see her in Delhi High Court all the time, and like she makes a baller of an argument. I've seen that. And I don't need to advocate myself. I've done like a lot of crazy stuff in life. And
Yeah, we
I'm
know.
passed out from your school. I'm always approachable. However, for notable judgments, I have like many constitution bench judgments, etc. If selling myself is the game over here, I've argued in front of pretty much every judge out there in the Supreme Court, including the ones who've retired till date, etc. And it's been a wonderful ride, etc. And I plan to keep on doing that, except maybe dial up the craziness by a notch. So I am probably going to argue a matter before the Supreme Court very soon about right to toilet being a fundamental right. And if they don't agree to it, I have a lot of theatrics planned. Which is going to
I was
make
going
a-
to say I'm going to take a leak right there.
Yeah. Before we're just about to dial up. Without any questions at all. Are you guys like not curious at
You
all?
can
or-
approach us after. That's fine.
Anybody?
I mean, all this gyan about questioning things and being curious and everything, and now there is
I think we're gonna get like reactions on the reel or something that I'll upload or something like that.
We're also 5 minutes away from lunch.
Yeah. Great guys. I hope you enjoyed today's session. Can I have a show of nothing hands like? Because clearly nobody is ready to raise hands, so I'm not gonna ask that question. कि आपको पसंद आया तो हाथ उठाए क्योंकि आप बहुत आलसी हो. And okay, ठीक है, fine. Whosoever enjoyed, just like give us a round of applause. Like we tried doing something fun. Yeah, you. Like thank you so much for applauding, sir. Really appreciate the fact. You in the check shirt. Really appreciate. आपने पूरा लेक्चर नहीं सुना, but end में ऐसे कर दिया. मेरे को लगा पता नहीं आप सुन रहे हो नहीं सुन रहे हो.
I applaud you.
Nevertheless, I am Anshul. I am running a podcast. I have my own YouTube channel. And before concluding, I'll roll out three things actually. I have a practice and I'm really getting bored out of that traditional practice. So I'm venturing out into the crazy fields that I've mentioned before. I'm looking for 5 interns who will be paid by the month. And will possibly be converted by the end of it into a PPO, which will be close to the range of, I don't know, like your capability, you decide.
Market standards.
No, not market standard. I'll be higher than market standard. And it's a highly driven office, which requires you to work longer hours, ask for overtime, ask for the most exquisite restaurant visits, as well as sitting at Kobani in Aero City and sitting with the owners and telling them that consulting for you is something that is a privilege to me and not just for you as well. Uh, those internships and the contacts can be taken from Mohit. Mohit, I think by the end of the day, I am also looking for two people to start their law practice in the field of social welfare with me by the end of June this year. I am starting to interview people, and I'd love to work with somebody who's passed out from my college because I've seen the kind of ways that people from non-NLUs go through. Like, all these are NLU people.
No, I'm not. I'm Symbiosis.
Oh, Symbi, sorry.
It's as far away from
So
NLU as
non-NLU people go through and suffer a lot.
Can't hold me like.
No, I'm not holding. I'm just telling them like motivation wale angle se. So again, the job opportunities will be straight up with Mohit again by the end of today, I believe, and they will be shared with you. The last thing is that please subscribe to my channel and join the Telegram group link for a lot of fun discussions and connecting with lawyers for your internships, for your jobs or queries, or just casually hanging out on a lawyer's night, on a lawyer's stand-up. Because I am myself a stand-up comic guy who's been in the stand-up scene for the past 10 years. Believe me, I did stand-up comedy in my first year of college. And this was here. So that's the kind of progressive stuff that like we have been doing over here. Anything else? With that, let's call it adjourn and Vakeel Lane out. I hope everybody had a fun run. Great work. I'd like somebody to take the mic and say thank you, and then we'll just roll out in style.